Welcome to Binging on Britain. I'm Katie, and I'll be your hostess as we gorge on bits of British history. Let's dig in. Question number 1. What do chainsaws have to do with historic Scottish medicine? In 1785, a pair of Scottish doctors invented the chainsaw as a method of removing the pelvic bone of laboring women to hasten childbirth. While this invention was very effective, it was applied without the use of anesthesia on a fully conscious mother who was already coping with excruciating pain and exhaustion due to prolonged labor. And while the device helped babies who may have been stuck and were at risk of antenatal death, it significantly raised the risk of mortality for the mother. If she didn't die from the effects of a difficult labor, she could easily pass away from hemorrhaging, shock, or infection due to the non-sterile instrument literally cutting out a portion of her pelvis. If she did survive, she would be more likely to die of pregnancy or childbirth complications in future pregnancies, prolapse of the pelvic organs, or damage to her urinary, reproductive, or digestive tracts, not to mention the mental trauma inflicted by the use of a chainsaw to deliver her baby. Question number 2. Which English king fathered the most children, none of whom would rule after his death? So, Henry I of England, son of William the Conqueror, had 29 children. You heard that right, 29. 5 of these children were conceived with his first wife, Matilda of Scotland, while the other 24 were born to a variety of mistresses. Of Henry's legitimate children, 2 survived to adulthood. His only legitimate son to survive maturity died in a shipwreck 15 years before Henry's own passing. This left his only surviving legitimate child, Matilda, to inherit the throne. Henry had the aristocracy declare their allegiance to Matilda in the event of his death, but when he died, Matilda's cousin usurped the throne while she was on the continent with her husband. England had never had a female ruler, and at the time it was believed that women were incompetent to rule. But Matilda still had a fair bit of support in her bid to take back the throne that rightfully belonged to her. The wars between her and her cousin Stephen were known as the Anarchy and are recognized as the first civil war in England. Matilda lost her bid, and none of Henry's 29 children were ever recognized as his successor. Question number 3. Who was the Muffin Man who lived on Drury Lane? The familiar children's song is said to have been a warning for children to avoid one Frederick Thomas Linwood, a baker who lived on Drury Lane in the late 16th century. And why did children need this warning? Well, according to legend, Fred was known for more than his muffins. He was England's first serial killer. The story goes that Mr. Linwood hated children loitering in his shop so much that he began murdering them. He was supposed to have even lured children to their deaths with an enticement of muffins. The Drury Lane dicer was also believed to have killed several rival pastry chefs and bakers before being caught out. There seems to be little to no documentary evidence to support this, and this may have just been a legend, but an interesting one to consider. Question number 4. How did the Romans introduce the term milestone into the English lexicon? Romans were amazing at creating roads, and they began measuring distance in miles, although their miles were a little shorter than our modern measurements. Over 100 stones marking the distance to important locales on Roman roads still exist in England. They have been known as milestones since the 18th century and are often marked with the name of the emperor or several of them. Modern English certainly has expanded the definition of milestones, but in the Roman period, they were literally large stones marking the miles along roads. Question number 5. Were there any major historical figures in England that were LGBTQ? There are several royals that have been rumored to have been gay or bi or not quite straight. William II died unmarried and childless and seems to have preferred male company. Richard I married but did not produce any children with his queen and has been depicted as gay in theater. Edward II is believed to have had a sexual relationship with Piers Gaveston, which led to his eventual imprisonment and murder, having had a hot poker forced into his fundament. Queen Elizabeth I was rumored to be a male masquerading as the queen, while her cousin, James I, had secret passageways to the bedrooms of his male favorites. Queen Anne is believed to have had a sexual relationship with Sarah Churchill, And Prince George, the Duke of Kent, uncle to Queen Elizabeth II, is believed to have had numerous male lovers prior to his death in an airplane crash during World War II. Princess Margaret's husband, Anthony Armstrong Jones, Earl of Snowdon, is believed to have been bisexual, and Lord Ivan Mountbatten came out in 2016 and is now married to James Coyle. It's hard to know for sure what the proclivities of historical figures were, but with the exception of a cross-dressing Queen Elizabeth, there's evidence that each royal mentioned here did engage in same-sex relationships. Question number 6. Why did Queen Mary take a young Princess Elizabeth home early from the theater? Queen Mary was quite a formidable woman, but an adoring grandmother, and she enjoyed taking her granddaughter to the theater. But one time the little princess suggested that they would have to stay after the production to greet the crowd. Her grandmother thought the child was being a little too full of herself, so she took her straight home. The queen wanted her granddaughter to understand that humility was the key to preserving the monarchy. It seems to have hit home with the little girl who grew into an extremely popular and humble sovereign. Question number 7. What was Operation Mincemeat? During World War II, misdirection was an important part of gaining a foothold. One such attempt at this called for the British to leak faked documents about an invasion. They did this by taking a fairly fresh corpse, giving it a fake identity as a member of the Royal Marines, and planting documentation on it before dropping it near a beach in Spain where the body washed up and the documents passed to the German intelligence, leading them to believe the Allies would invade Greece and Sardinia, leaving Sicily undefended by their occupiers, when the Brits came to the island and freed them. There is currently a movie on Netflix entitled Operation Mincemeat based on this event, and it's totally worth a watch. Question number 8. Did the Brits engage in any other tactical deception? When gearing up for D-Day, the London Controlling Section made up an entire army. The first U.S. Army group was this imaginary army led by a very real General Patton. The Allies fed information to the Germans that they would be invading Calais, which effectively drew troops away from Normandy, allowing the Allies a somewhat less difficult landing on D-Day. As we now know, this invasion was the turning point in the war, which eventually led to an Allied win. Not that there is ever really a winner in war. Question number 9. Has there ever been an English pope? Pope Adrian IV was born Nicholas Breakspere, circa 1100. He was educated and took holy orders in Paris, and after a life in service of the Catholic Church, he was elected pope on December 4th, 1154. In the history of the papacy, Mr. Breakspere has been the only pope from jolly old England. Question number 10. Did the Queen Mum support gay rights? George VI's queen was surprisingly supportive for someone born into Victorian values. The royal family employed a great many LGBTQ folks, most notably an openly gay couple, William Talon and Reginald Wilcock. The Queen Mother once said to have told her arguing servants, "When you two old queens have finished arguing, this old queen wants her gin." She also quipped at a Tory minister who advised her not to employ homosexuals, saying that without them, quote, "we'd have to go self-service," end quote, indicating that the majority of her staff were LGBTQ. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Binging on Britain. If you have, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast wherever you listen. For daily facts on British history, consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. Have a great day.